Hi, welcome back to another Writers After Dark. I am Summer Brooks, and we are here because good stories start with the writers. Since wherever there's a story, someone's either making it up or writing it down. And with me today is debut author Alex Dekker, whose new book, Desert Heist, is a thriller coming out from Atria Books July 28th. And I have not finished reading the book, but so far I'm getting Indiana Jones by way of The Expendables and Kelly's Heroes, with a little bit of Ocean's 11 thrown in for flavor. And all of that makes for a very, very heady, breakneck paced adventure story that so far has been fun. Full disclosure, I have not finished it yet, but Alex is here to tell us all about this fever dream of an adventure story. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Summer. Thanks for having me.
So this is a pretty, I'm going to say, adventurous outing for your first novel, and it it reminds me in terms of pacing of the sort of, I guess, the relentless cascade of continuous events that I've gotten used to reading in a Robert Crace novel, his Elvis Cole and Joe Pike's story. I invariably make the mistake of starting to read at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, saying, oh, I'll just read the first 4 chapters and then go to bed. No, I read it all the way through. And this sort of gives me that everything is happening and it's going to continue to happen until we reach a cliff and everybody falls off of it. And then when they hit the bottom of the cliff, they're going to keep on going, sort of pace. So your background is actually similar to our protagonist, Nate Wilde. Talk about creating Nate to be this, I guess I'm going to say, repressed Indiana Jones.
Sure. My background, I spent 20 years in the Army, in Army Special Forces, better known as the Green Berets. And so my protagonist, Nate Wilde, has a similar background, except for instead of 20 years, he did 10 years, then kind of got out mid-career, sort of after a disastrous deployment where he loses a couple teammates, and just kind of becomes disillusioned with the whole military process. So he falls back on his secondary passion in life, which is history. And so he goes back to school to pursue a PhD in archaeology. And he is working on his dissertation, putting his thesis together about a lost city that he had learned about during his time in the military from a Saudi officer that he was working with. And he, things don't go the way that he wants them to go. He doesn't quite get the support he's looking for from the examining committee, and has a little trouble getting a permit to go do the research and expedition that he wants to do. So he winds up doing it anyway and needs to enlist some of his former teammates and buddies to help him along the way on that adventure. And so having that background as a Green Beret with those experiences allows him and his fellow teammates to kind of pull from that with all the things that they've learned and all the experiences they have, and put those into the adventure that they're now embarking on.
So this from the start was going to be a team building adventure and a team effort.
Yes. So particularly in the special operations community, with the very few exceptions, it's really a team sport. So we see a lot of in literature or in fiction in general, and movies or TV shows. We love the lone wolf that goes and gets after things, and those are great and they're a lot of fun. The reality of it is that the strength of most special operations organizations and units, that they come from the team. They come from all of the sum of the parts working together. And so while Nate Wilde is I like to say that his superpower is his intellect, and he still has some of those skills that he learned in the special forces, and the other guys bring their skills as well, and so they all have strengths, they all have weaknesses, and then they all compensate for one another to kind of to bring together what they need to accomplish what they're going after.
And I'm not kidding when I say I get a little taste of like Kelly's Heroes, and with a little tiny bit of the Expendables thrown in, and then you've got maybe Leverage, where you've got like the mastermind picking his experts and pulling them together and making a team out of an improbable cast of characters who are all specialists in their own area, but together as a team they work better. And I just like I'm a huge fan of Kelly's Heroes. Just yeah, being of a certain age,
Mhm.
seeing that movie as a teenager, as a kid, was like, what in the world? This is not the World War II I studied in history class. So, what is there any historical accuracy to the existence of this city, Ubar?
Whew, okay, so um, well, let me first address what you said before about the characters. It makes it easy to write because these characters are all drawn from different pieces of people that I've known. When you spend time on a special operations team, in Army Special Forces, it's the Special Forces Operational Attachment Alpha, ODA, or A Team, as it's colloquially known. You get characters. It's just a team full of characters. Everybody has their own personalities. Everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and you get the interactions, whether it's good or bad, whether it clashes, whether it supports. It's kind of like a big family, like a secondary family, if you will. And so the interaction between them and how everything unfolds, for me, was actually pretty easy to write, having spent almost the better part of a decade on an ODA. Just kind of came natural, and so that's a lot of fun to write. Um, as far as the existence of Ubar, so yes, there is, like most legends, they're grounded in some truth. There's a lot of oral history, and we see Ubar, or Aram of the Pillars, as it's also known. We see it show up in A Thousand and One Nights, also known as Arabian Nights.
Mhm.
We see it show up in the Quran. We see it show up in some other places, and so there is some historical grounding for the existence of a city, and it's based off of the old frankincense trade routes that would go, down through Oman, Yemen, and then, up around the coast and the Red Sea. Uh, having the ability to have a trade route that cuts through the Arabian desert, through the empty quarter, which is just a lot of vast nothingness, but sand mostly, would have cut off the time that it took to move those goods around. And so there is some speculation of that, that there could have been. And I think in 92, which I also mentioned in the book, there was an expedition that went out and found a city in Oman, in Shishir, I believe, that they said this could very well have been a lost city of the legends. And so it's one of those things that it had towers, which they kind of take to be the pillars, and it seems like it had sunken because of the water table underneath it had kind of slid down a little bit, and so it met a lot of the markers for the legend. And so, whether that was the city or whether that was an example of the types of cities out there, who knows? But there definitely is some historical grounding for the existence of a city like this.
So, was that considered a separate trade route from, the old legends of the old Silk Road?
Yeah, I think so. I think it because of the way that they came, like whether they came across the water and then throughout. But back then, if you're going into Arabia and then the Middle East, Mesopotamia area. They were all essentially interlinked, right, to one degree or another. So I think there were separate routes, but they kind of all wound up tying in whenever they connected in various places.
So talk about a little about the personalities of Nate's team, because there's like you said before, there's some characters, but convincing such shall we say stubbornly individualistic people to go on a literal wild goose chase after something that may or may not exist, and you're kind of going beyond the gray area of having permission to do so. Talk about putting those elements together, because that is a foundation for everything that happens later, or as far as I've gotten, where uh, shall we say, rules are skirted and shenanigans ensue.
So as they tend to do in the special forces, so Green Berets are kind of known. The specialty of the Green Berets is unconventional warfare, and so by its nature, it's out of uniforms, it's long hair, it's breaking rules. The idea of unconventional warfare is essentially going into a country that is either occupied by an oppressive government or a occupying power of some variety, and working with local indigenous forces to coerce, disrupt, and overthrow that government by whatever means you can do that fall within the limits of the law of armed conflict. So a lot of it is unconventional thinking, outside the box, and not what you think of, well, what the typical person thinks of when they think of the military, which is a little more rigid, a little more standards, a little more doctrine for everything. For special forces, you're kind of taught and encouraged to think outside the box, and to kind of go around and just find a way. We say find a way to get to yes, find a way to get the job done, no matter what it is. And so that's what we see the characters in the book doing, is finding a way to get the job done, regardless of what's in their way. And if that's international laws, then so be it. Writing the characters themselves, like I said, it's fun because if you're unfamiliar with special forces or special operations community, it's a little peek inside the window of it. Every character comes with their own sort of background. So Tim McBride is the 18 Bravo. He's the special forces weapons sergeant on the team, or at least was, right? They're all out of the military now. And so that comes with a personality type. And I've let a couple of buddies do early reads of the book, and through the characters and their jobs, the feedback I got was, you nailed it. It's great. It's almost like not quite a caricature, but you can recognize the personality traits. The weapons sergeants tend to be a little more rough around the edges. They tend to be, they're big into weapons. They tend to be a little more direct in their thinking and the way that they approach things. Nate was the special forces intelligence sergeant on the team, tends to be more analytical, take things in, connect all the dots, see where things are, how they're unfolding, and then make those kind of analytical leaps and decisions from there. Shane Price is the 18 Charlie, which is the engineer sergeant on the team. They build things, they blow things up, but they also are kind of the guys that find ways to get things done. They get what you need, basically, kind of your local fixers. And so you see that in Shane Price, that he always has an answer. He knows a guy. He knows a guy who can get you what you need. And so these kind of personality types come out. The same with Wally, the SAS, British SAS, Special Air Service medic. I've worked along several British forces during my career, and so kind of a conglomeration of those are thrown into Wally's character as well. So, like I said, really fun to write, because I can kind of write what they're I can build the character within what the stereotype is for those types of jobs and professions, and then I can expound upon them and then have them interact with each other, which is, I think, where a lot of the fun is. It's a lot of fun to write. Hopefully it's a lot of fun to read, and honestly, it was a lot of fun to just watch and be a part of for so many years in the special forces.
Well, like I said, so far it's been a lot of fun, and I should have recognized, what's his name? Shane as the scrounger, sooner. It didn't hit me until you were describing, he's the one who goes out and finds things. I'm like, "Oh, okay. The Great Escape, the scrounger. Gotcha."
Love all the World
Um,
War II references. All the World War
uh-huh.
II. It's
Yep,
great.
yep, little there's a lot of history in those sort of off the books, uh, adventures, off the books operations that have been reflected in a lot of World War II movies because that happened a lot during that time, and I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing that the more, intellectually inventive stories like that don't happen anymore. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. So I think fiction is a great way to relate these stories because it's fun and you can take it out kind of outside of the box of the serious read or the serious watch or whatever it might be, but you can still lace that history in. So it's always great when you're entertained but you're also learning something.
Mhm.
um, World War II is fascinating because a lot of the advent of modern special operations occurred there and occurred out of necessity, right? It was a fight for survival, and so you see it with the British special operations executive or special operations, um, uh, uh, the uh, the OSS, Office of Strategic Services. That was kind of their mandate was to get in to mess things up to win, because they had to. The British SAS that was started in World War II to mess up Germany in Northern Africa. All of these things occurred because they uh, they needed options to fight this Axis war machine, and so you see a lot of the inventions of strategy, of tactics, of these kind of characters that don't fit into the norm of the gentleman officer or the disciplined troop. They're outside of that, but they're effective, and so that's kind of where you see the history of all this stuff building. That's a lineage that's continued up until today.
Talk a little bit about the archaeology side of this story. How much research did you have to do in for archaeology, for how archaeologists work, for how they do their research, for hey, this is pinpointing an area and saying this is where I think this is. Can I go look?
Tons. So I've always thought archaeology was fantastic ever since I watched Indiana Jones when I was 9 years old, and thought this is amazing. Archaeologists are very cool, and then slowly learned that it wasn't all just punching Nazis in the face, but still very interesting and still very fascinating. And so always loved history, always thought archaeology is very interesting. Had an opportunity when I was younger to kind of participate and just kind of be a shovel bum on some archaeological digs, just kind of help out, cart dirt, things like that, but just be near it and see the process. And so doing this, it wasn't I didn't need to sit down and start studying archaeology. I already had kind of a background of the process and how things worked. I went back to it to make sure that I was capturing a lot of the accuracy, and then took it a step farther and actually spent some time speaking with and interviewing some archaeologists, and just talking to them about their experiences, and not just in excavations and how they do their research and discovering, but what was the process like to become an archaeologist? What were your studies like? How did you, tell me about your dissertation and how you went about building that, and what was it like whenever you had to defend it, and things like that, just to get as much ground truth knowledge as possible. So whenever I built out this fictional realm, it could be as grounded in that aspect as the history is and as the tactical realism is.
Did you do any actual on the ground uh, follow up research? Like, a tag along with somebody who was putting together an expedition or go out to an expedition where they were already digging?
No, no. So not prior to this book or writing the book, but now that I am retired from the army, I plan to do a little bit more of that.
Are there any regions you in particular have an interest in checking out or doing research with somebody who's studying?
All of them, yeah. The nice thing about writing books too is that you, especially whenever you're writing about different areas. So, for example, the second book in the Nate Wilde series is already written. It's already turned into the editor. I'm working on writing the third. For Desert Heist, I have spent, I don't know, a lot of my life in the Middle East, traveling around, whether for deployments or even in between deployments, checking out some historical archaeological sites, things like that. And so it was a very easy and natural book for me to write because of that experience. As I look at other areas that I want to write about, it's essentially a great excuse to say, I need to travel there. I need to go check this out. I need to make sure that I can write with the accuracy that I wrote Desert Heist. And so it's given me essentially a great reason to go traveling around to other locations. I won't say any more. 'Cause I won't spoil any future locations. But
That's fine, because that was literally going to be my next question. We already knew that this was the first of Nate Wild's adventures, and that's my question. Are his subsequent adventures, since this is the first in the series, going to all be about archaeological exploration?
um, kind of. I think I don't want to paint it into a corner and say necessarily archaeological exploration and uncovering the past for sure. Um, N- Nate is coming to realize something, that maybe there's more to human history than we think, and he's on the trail of that and will continue uncovering that in unique and interesting ways.
So it's not just looking for lost known areas, but he might go hunting for fables and legends as well.
I think you'll be surprised what Nate might run into and how, but no matter what Nate runs into, it's never going to be overly fantastical. It's always going to be things that are grounded in uh, a lot of factual truth.
Okay.
So there's always
Well,
going to be very real history attached to everything that Nate does.
okay, so you're saying pirate treasure. Cool.
You never know.
No. So what about Nate's team going forward? Is this going to be a revolving cast where he picks and chooses the best people for whatever region he's going into, whatever trouble he's expecting to find himself in?
So I think when you read a book like this, it's natural to have your pick out your favorites, or like one character, or have a favorite character or something like that. And so I think we will continue to see a lot of the same characters. Now, how we see them and how much and in what variety, that's kind of the fun of having multiple supporting characters, is that you can play with that a little bit. So I won't say that it's going to be necessarily like that, where he's got a team kind of loaded that he can pick and choose who goes with, but how they may wind up together going on different adventures, or how that unfolds, will happen in different ways, right? Because that's part of, you don't want the same sort of trope happening over and over again, where the same guys keep finding themselves in similar situations over and over again. Because I think that kind of maybe gets a little tiresome. So finding different, new, unique, and interesting ways that maybe draw some of these characters back in together for something is just honestly half the fun of putting them together.
Will there be any short stories or novellas of side quests featuring just Nate or maybe Nate and one other guy?
Maybe.
KG answer. What for you is the most fun about writing? I mean, this is your first published novel, but I'm going to guess that it's not your first story. What is it about the writing process that excites and intrigues you?
Uh, so I think what excites me the most about it is twofold. One, when I write these books, it's like I said, they're painstakingly researched, and so I go down the rabbit holes upon the rabbit holes, diving into the history, putting it together. Much like Nate and I have a very similar background, and so the way that he puts together solving the mystery, looking for this lost city, he's putting together charts and graphs and he's mapping them out. I do that same thing when I'm building the story. And so I have map overlays going on, and I have, I'm just stacking all the research, much in the way that I used to do when I was on a team back in the day. Instead of say tracking terrorist networks so that we can dismantle them, I am building a story that the reader will assemble throughout a book. So it's a lot of fun to do that. It's a lot of fun to do the research. I do it anyway. I haven't had a lot of time, I think, for hobbies over 20 years in the military and special operations. The one thing I've consistently done is just studied history, read books, gone down internet rabbit holes, heard something off, on the TV or something about a lost city here or this piece of history, and then just there goes 4 hours of my life disappeared researching this historical fact I didn't know existed or whatnot. And so I've always done that anyway, and doing it for a purpose and for a book is half of the fun. The other half of the fun is writing the story. When I sit down and write, um, I say that I have not experienced writer's block, knock on wood. I have the opposite problem. When I sit down to write, I just want to keep writing. And before I know it, I've put 10,000 words on a page and it's 3 a.m. and I need to force myself to stop and go to bed. And I look forward to getting up and writing the next day, because I find putting the stories together, writing them, writing the characters, the character interactions, just so enjoyable, that it's what I would want to do. And I wrote Desert Heist and I wrote the sequel before I even thought about trying to get anything published. I sort of did it for me as a creative exercise, creative thought exercise in between combat deployments. Then I put them away and didn't look at them until a little while later when I met my now wife and it came up in conversation. She wanted to read it, and then said, "Hey, this is pretty good. You should do something with this." And then that's kind of how all of this evolved. But I would write these anyway because I enjoy doing it, and I hope people enjoy reading them as much as I enjoy writing them.
So, are you more of a pantser or a plotter or a hybrid, or has that changed from when you first wrote the bones of Desert Heist till now?
Uh, Probably like a lot of people, I think I'm a combination. I definitely outline. I know essentially where the story is going to go and kind of the key points, and that's because I am always thinking about it. I'm always turning over plot points in my mind, and that's just not necessarily for the book I'm writing. I mean, I'm writing book three, and I will continuously have thoughts about book six that come into my head. Then I jot those down, and I have a running list going so that I have a dozen or so books roughly outlined as to what I want them to look like. As when I That's which is beneficial, because when I know where I want book 12 to go, I can incorporate things into book 1 and 2 that you won't think much of now, but maybe on book 6 or book 8 or book 12, that will become apparent, and you will see that it was woven throughout the story the entire time. So it's a lot of fun that I like naturally think that far ahead. But what I do, I literally a loose outline. I mean, a single sentence about maybe what's occurring in this part of the story, and then I go in and I write. And so everything else in between, I don't do one of these long 15, 20,000 word outlines. I wouldn't even know how to do that, to be honest. I just have a rough outline of where I want it to go, and then I go in and I write the story, and that's where the pantsing part comes in, where it just kind of evolves, and some things will change as I'm writing it, and maybe it'll. I've heard writers say this before, and it's completely true. Sometimes the story or the characters take you maybe in a direction you didn't realize it was going, but that's the way that it naturally progressed, and that's the way it's supposed to go. So you go with it. So a long-winded way of saying a little bit of both.
Excellent. Are you or is Atria sending you on a sort of book tour or book promotions out in the field where you can uh, meet people that are falling in love with the story?
Uh, yes. So as of right now, I think there are um, two book signing schedules. One for August 1st at Bethany Beach Books in Delaware, and then one on August 8th at Fountain Bookstore in Richmond, Virginia. I think there may be some more to come, but those are the two I think on the books that I'm tracking right now.
Nice. So, where's the best place for people to keep track of you and Nate's upcoming adventures in case they want to prepare themselves for what's coming next, or head on out to meet you at a signing?
So my website, alexdekkerofficial.com, or on social media, um, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter or X, ALX Dekker. So you can get all the updates from any of those locations.
Excellent, excellent. We'll have links to those, and we'll have links to Desert Heist, which again will be available July 28th from Atria Books in print, ebook, and there's also an audiobook, correct?
There's an audiobook narrated by Eduardo Ballerini, Golden Voice award-winning narrator. Excellent, super enthused to have him on board, and should be good.
Have you heard it yet?
I have not yet, but I think I should be hearing some samplings here soon.
Yeah, no, that's a perk. You wrote the story. You should be one of the first to hear how it's going to sound for those who prefer audiobooks. That's pretty cool. So I hope you get to listen to that soon.
Thank you.
Alex, thank you very, very much for your time today. This was a fun one, and I do look forward to finishing this book.
All right. Well, I hope you do, and I'd love to hear your thoughts when you're done. And thanks for having me on.
Hey, this is Summer, and I'd like to remind everybody about the Star Trek book I co-edited, Women Take the Con, an unauthorized Star Trek essay collection by women writers about the women of Star Trek, the original series. And I'm really proud of this. Hope you guys go check it out. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. The link is right here. My co-editor, Rich Handley, was instrumental in pulling all of the elements for this book together. And we are really proud of this book. So, if you are a fan of Star Trek, the original series, support us. Check it out. I thank you. Rich thanks you. Star Trek fans, thank you.